throughout southeastern Pennsylvania. Prior to joining Westminster in 2009, he served for 5 years as organist and choir director at the Episcopal Church of the Holy Trinity in Westchester. Conrad retired in 2015 from his position as Director of Human Resources and Administration at Communications Test Design, Inc., a global engineering technology firm headquartered in Westchester. Conrad and his wife Bonnie have been married 45 years and have 2 grown children and 3 grandchildren. Without further ado, Conrad.
Thank you. And before I say anything, how do I advance and go back as I stuff these?
Oh.
Up?
No, sorry. Please. This one, these 2.
Okay.
This will go forward.
Okay. We got All right, thank you. Thank you, Dave, for the intro. And thanks for inviting me to be a part of the day. Today, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I've been saying it's finally seasonal out there in terms of the temperature. So, yeah, the title of the day here is Organ Demonstration and Explanation. I was thinking maybe I could call it Everything You Wanted to Know About the Organ, but we're afraid to ask. But that would be so much. We'd have to have a conference of several days to go through, all of that. So this is sort of going to be a distilled executive summary kind of presentation about it. So we don't often see the. Oh, and good morning to the people up on the. I just need to look through here, right?
Yes.
They're on the Zoom. Good morning. Thanks for being, there wherever you are. So here's a picture of our console. We don't see it often in the concert position. We've had that up. It's on dollies. It's not the easiest dolly to move around, but it does move. And there's plenty of the cords, the extension cords for all that work, the wires for all the pipes. That sort of have to feed it out from under the chancel and then feed it back in when you put the organ back in its regular position for Sunday services. Just to expand a little bit on my brief bio, this seminar is not about me, but I just wanted to, share how God has encouraged me in music and provided such opportunities to share, the joy of the organ. I was born near Glen Rock, New Jersey, Patterson, New Jersey. Lived in Glen Rock until I was about 13, and then we moved with a job change with my dad's to Allentown, where we joined First Presbyterian Church in Allentown. So that was my first experience of hearing the organ, because in New Jersey, the kids went to Sunday school, parents went to church, so never really had much of a church experience, church music and things like that. But in Allentown, everybody went to church at either 8:30 or 11, and then were expected to go to Sunday school or church school in between the hours at 9:30 or whatever that was, kind of thing. So I remember the first time I heard the organ, and we were sitting sort of up close. Wow, what a magnificent, splendorous, sound. So that sort of immediately captivated my interest. And then I had to go, the engineering side of me got involved when it said, I got to see how that makes that work. So I went out to the chancel afterwards and saw the console with all these keyboards and buttons and switches and pedals and things. I said, wow, I got to figure that out sometime. So I was involved in the what was called the Westminster Choir. It was the youth choirs, grades 7 through 12. I didn't know Sheldon at the time, but Sheldon Dean, and I knew each other from church. Sorry, I'll just keep talking. Knew from church, as well as Air Products. We were employed by Air Products and Chemicals, global gas and chemical manufacturing company, headquartered in little Pennsylvania Dutch town of Trexlertown. But Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Thousands of people there on this huge campus kind of thing. So anyway, I had a job change that took us down into the Philadelphia region. But up in Allentown, so I was married. I met my wife Bonnie there. She was from Ardmore. She was a teacher in the Parkland School District, just outside on the west side of Allentown. And then we moved down here with a job change, and as Dave mentioned, I've worked with for CTDI, Communications Test Design, or Global Engineering and Technology in the telecommunications and broadband, space there for 26 years. My background was in finance and accounting. That's where I started, even at their products, and then finally got into human resource. I don't know how that worked, but God's hand. You often don't know where God is leading you, but you can see His hand in retrospect. You can see how He's guiding you with experiences to develop and grow. So that brought us down to the area here. It's not going. Well, still up in Allentown, somehow with the organ, work I was involved in, maybe even, but I think I counted up to 18 churches one time where I was a substitute organist and choir leader, kind of thing. And then when we moved down here to the Chester County and the Delaware Valley, sort of the same thing, opportunities blossomed, and I had really enjoyed being a substitute. Aside from being fully employed, all week long. The chance to go experience and play different instruments and lead worship, with different people and completely different settings and so on. That was very, rewarding, for me. Let's see, Ted, it's not advancing now. Sorry.
No.
I'll just pull up my notes here so I can keep going, but stay on track. Well, by the way, while we're making that adjustment, the plan is I want to be watching the clock to end here about 20 of 11. So we've got about 5 minutes to get us to the sanctuary, get the show on the road, a field trip over there, where I can sort of demonstrate some things for maybe 10 minutes. Then we'll close with a hymn. We gather together, Thanksgiving, thing, we'll get the hymns. And then at 11 o'clock, I'm going to aim to be done at 11 to honor everybody's own schedule. But I will play a little postlude, a Virgil Fox arrangement of Now Thank We All Our God, composed originally by Bach, Johann Sebastian. And so that will be for those who wish to and want to, could stay past the time. I'll try to, honor the schedule. Okay, so we're going through we're almost done with it. So the American Guild of Organists.
Not quite. Sorry, folks. Not my day.
I've been a member of the American Guild of Organists from the Lehigh Valley chapter up in the Allentown, Bethlehem area, and then when we moved down here to the Philadelphia chapter, also a smaller Southeast Pennsylvania chapter. And there are some members in the areas here, Philadelphia and Southeast together. And then when we went to down in Florida, in Wellington, my wife's an equestrian type. She rides dressage, so Wellington is sort of the equine center of the universe in the wintertime for horse people. So that's what brings us down to Wellington for December through mid-April. So I'm a member of the Palm Beach County. I stay in touch because I love the opportunities to share, and whether it's concerts or what they call organ crawls. If you're an organist, you don't actually go crawling through the pipes. That could be dangerous if you're someone. But you go to different churches and you get to hear people talk about that particular instrument and some history about that particular organ. So that's a nice professional organization that keep me in touch. Brief history of the organ. It goes back to antiquity. Earliest times, there's no recorded date like, okay, on this date, the organ was invented. It's really, when you look at especially the pipes you see in the chancel here, they're based on the flute. Flute was one of the oldest instruments. I have not researched yet. That'll be next time I'm invited back, if I am, to do part 2 of this, to find out more about some of the history, the origins, and so on. What about the stringed instruments, or the mandolin and guitar, things like that. But originally based on the flute, and that's what the basic organ pipe is, right? You look at our chancel, and you go back here, and you see, all these pipes up here. These are the exposed pipes. It's basically a big long flute. You put air in the bottom, and it makes a whistle, and depending on the size of the pipe and its shape and everything, so it produces a tone. The hydraulis, I mentioned that. I saw when I was researching this in a Broadway. This is one of the earliest systems for providing air, where they would put pipes in a row on wood and have a little air reservoir that was somehow powered by water. So that's why they call it the hydraulis. There was water that would then compress air and push in a vase and then push air, into the pipe. So it wasn't spouting water. It wasn't like a, super soaker. Pre-electric pneumatic. Okay, so in box time, we take for granted we turn on the switch and we've got electricity to power things. And all this technology, but in box day, no, they didn't have electricity, so they had to have somebody from the junior choir or something go in the back behind the pipes, pump the bellows. There's different methods of how
I did that.
they did that. You did that?
I did that.
Well, there's your speaker for next week. Right here. He could talk about that. Good, Ted. Yeah, so that. Again, we take for granted hearing something. We hear a recording of, from box church. They're all electrified, things, now. But in those days, you had to have somebody that was dependable. Wasn't going to go take a break or hurt themselves and fall off the bellows and have the organ just sort of die. That had to be dependable. They never got credits. Like when you see movies, you get the credits at the end. They never got a bunch of great credits that I know of. Maybe they did. Maybe their name was mentioned in the bulletin. Pumping the bellows today.
I didn't get credit.
Here's the fascinating thing for me. It's an art form. Musical arts, but the organ is so science and engineering based. And I'll show some slides later about how they design. The AGO, American Guild of Organists, standards for design and so on. But it's not just function. It's not just form. It's both together. Modern, in terms of organ, modern organs today, we have the traditional organ like we have here and throughout the valley. Some churches will have a more gospel organ, so they got different kinds of stops and they've got extra vibratos and things on there, kind of thing, and sort of like the theater organ. And I saw the note that Wayne Zimmerman is out of town or something at this time, but I know maybe he'll see this. Maybe he's not watching now, but maybe he'll watch it on recording or something like that. So I want to pay homage to Wayne and his skills. How many people have seen Wayne play at Phoenixville? Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I remember the first time I saw him. The organ, I didn't know that the organ was in a pit below the stage, and then you hear the music going, so up it comes, and he had his Batman costume on, or something. It's a Halloween kind of thing, and accompanying the silent movies and so on, quite some skill. And jazz organs. The organ has become known, and I don't know what the first sighting of this is, as the king of instruments. Most instruments can only play one note at a time. Okay, so strings, violins, you can play two or something, or maybe you can sort of, rub in three. But the organ, you press down one note, you can have all these different stops and different sounds going, and you can play more than one note, and you've got the whole orchestra. We were talking about earlier this morning about how churches, they came to have the organ because they couldn't, not everybody could afford an orchestra to play for the service. So with an organ, there was enough power and sound to support congregational singing that the piano could only go so far with. Our organ here, this is a Chance organ from Chance, is what the manufacturer is located in Orrville, Ohio. That's sort of between Columbus and Cleveland, if you look on the map. It was installed in 1974 in the old church location. I'll have some pictures of that later on. The Zimbel stern, that's like imagine a turntable, like your phonograph turntable, and it has bells, little bells on it, small little bells, maybe 5 or 6, or depends. And it's rotating around, and then there's a little chime thing, the thing that strikes the bell as it's going on. So like ding, 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 ding. So I hope I remember to demo that when we get into the sanctuary. The organ was moved to this location in 1993 when they built the church. From what I know, they had looked at, a new organ, for this new location, but found in terms of cost and budget and things like that, and it was a very fine instrument. Well, we'll move it over here. So it actually moved. And I remember it, being involved in the process of moving when it was half empty. I had to play, Linda Lorgas at the time had invited me to play for a wedding that she couldn't do at the old church, but the organ was mostly gone. So those big facade pipes are up, but you could see that, things were being torn out in the process. So I had to play this little sort of, one of these, living room kind of organs with a part of a keyboard this way and part there. So again, like I said, I've enjoyed being a substitute. Part of the challenge for me is how do I make something sound good, whatever it is. Yeah, lemonade out of lemons, that kind of thing. But yeah, so I remember, and I remember hearing it at the old location, but I didn't get to play it at that location. In 2000, Linda was able to work with our tuning company, Charles Gibson, and we found this trumpet. It was called, actually, I'll mention it, it'll be on a slide later. It was originally called Pontifical Trumpet. Cool, I can stop by. It was located in the chapel of Bryn Mawr Presbyterian Church, the little chapel on the side of the church if you've been to Bryn Mawr. They were taking out the molar, that was becoming available, you know, kind of thing, and they did something else I don't remember. I remember seeing that organ. I didn't get to play it, but I remember being there one time. Then in 2001, we got a lot, you know, came into the 20th century, you know, now that the 21st century was here, and got some piston multiple memory levels, MIDI recording capabilities, kind of thing. So you can actually record what you're playing, put it on a disc in a slot, and play back. So I remember in some of the days, you know, a few years back, we used to have that 8:30 service in the morning. I would sometimes help with that, but other times Glenn would just record, you know, a hymn on it, and then one of the pastors at the, you know, at the end for the last hymn, because he'd have to go back to rehearse the choir for the next service. You know, one of the pastors would come up and press a certain button, and that would start the recording. You know, nobody there, but it would go on. So, so yeah, here's the display, and we'll define some of these terms as we go on here. It's just maybe a little harder to see. But this identifies each of the, so at the top it says Shout's organ 1974, Roman numeral 3/41. That's organ lingo for there's 3 manuals and there's 41 stops, or 41 ranks. Ranks is another technical term. Rank just means row, a row of pipes. So a rank of pipes is just a row of pipes, you know, from the largest to the smallest. And as you'll see, there's different ways of displaying those pipes, or even behind the screen. If most of our pipes are hidden behind the screen, how those pipes are arranged. But a rank, so the swell division, that's the top manual. There are 3 manuals. The swell is the top manual. There's 13 stops that you could pull out and choose what to play. There's 13 ranks for a total of 817 pipes. There's 61 notes, 5 octaves from C to 6. Wow. See it there, kind of thing. So, and here's the great division, 7 stops, 10 ranks, and there's more ranks there because there's a mixture. So there's 7 stops, but one of those stops, there's 4 pipes that sound at the same time. It's called a mixture. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well. There's all based on the harmonics. We're going back to the science and physics now, how those pipes sound. The choir division, the positive, tennis. So there's the display. Total with the organ, we've got 47 stops, 41 ranks of pipes, because there's some duplication on the different manuals, for a total of close to 2,300 pipes. And this is just more of those the data there. Stop nomenclature. Okay, what are these stops called? Okay, so we know that there's different kinds of pipes, different kinds of sounds, and I'll have a picture of the stop jams, and you'll see it when we get over there and so on. But basically, the names, might sound foreign to a non-organist. When you see, okay, you could see, if you see the word trumpet, so, well, I have an idea what that's going to be. It's going to be a reedy sound. It's not necessarily to imitate exactly a regular horned trumpet, kind of thing. Some stops are. At some churches, they'll have, for organ installation, maybe a French horn. Now, they're usually going to typically try to sound like somebody playing, a French horn, imitative stuff. But anyway, the names reflect the countries. May have maybe there's a reed on an organ called the bombard. That's going to reflect the French heritage and style and voicing of the sound, kind of thing. There'll be something else that is called a principal. That's the main organ stop. It's also known as a diapason. Maybe you've heard of that. That's the basic organ. Those pipes that are exposed out on our screen that go up there, those are metal, principal pipes, because it's the principal sound of the organ. The basic organ tone, that is the basic sound of the organ. The others are, doing something different or imitating something else. Stop pitch numerals, length of open pipe at lowest C note. So in addition to the name, there's going to be a number on it. You'll see it more. You might not be able to see with the pictures of the stop jams that I'll show, but when we get up there, I'll be sure to point out. So it's got the name of the stop and a number. 8. If it says 8 foot, that means at the lowest C note on the keyboard or the pedal board, lowest note, that pipe is going to, an open pipe would be 8 foot long, 8 feet long. And more physics into play here. So an octave above that, a pipe that sounds whatever that pitch is there at 8 foot, it's going to sound an octave higher at 4 foot, 2 foot, 1, so on as you go through. I didn't explain the chart very much, and it's hard to read. These green bars, in terms of musical eras and countries and regions, the long green bar. Oh yeah, you don't see my finger going across there. The big green bar, medieval. I'm going away from the camera for now. Medieval, Renaissance, the Baroque periods, classical, romantic, 20th century. You may have heard of those kinds of terms of musical eras. At Westminster, the shortest pipe is about 3/4 of an inch. So that's sounding about 16,000 hertz. That's about the limit of what we can hear if our ears are really good. I think at this age, maybe it doesn't quite get that high. It's like I remember buying styluses for turntables. Remember those days when you had record players? So well, this Shure stylus, this will go up to 40,000. Well, you don't hear above 20 for sure, but I'm sure it works towards how good it's going to be in the range you can hear. The longest pipe we have is 16 feet. That's in the facade, and some behind other stops that are 16 feet in the back, like behind the screen, like the reed. So I'll just go back. This is working really good now, Ted. You've got it on express. So, I'm sorry that people on Zoom probably can't see. Well, you see the slide, right? They'll see the slide. So on the left side of the chancel, for instance, to the left of the cross, this tallest pipe up here, that is 16 foot. These panels are about 4 feet, square. So this is 16 foot. The next longest pipe is over here. That's going to be the C sharp. And then here's the D. So again, this is part of organ design, how they decide these things. And you can tell because they're different lengths that they're real speaking pipes. Some places you go to an organ, you see the case with all these pipes. But if you see everything is perfectly symmetrical or just right, those are likely to be called dummy pipes. They're there for design. The real organ pipes are behind that, case. The lowest sounding note we have is a 32 foot. Oh, so back the longest pipe, 16 feet. So 32 hertz. So that's about we're getting down as low as you're going to hear or almost feel. And especially if you go lower than that, to a lot of large organs will have 32 feet pipes. So an open pipe would be 32 feet long. We had one of those at First Presbyterian, the contrapposon, the reed pipe, and they couldn't really fit it in the back though, so they had to miter the pipe, would go up and down, and then finally, expand as it goes up there, so it fit in 32 feet of travel down low C. So that's down at 16 hertz. I mean, you really feel that more than hear it. But we have a resultant now. That's a derived thing. Again, going back to physics. It takes, rather than having a separate set of pipes to go down the lowest octave in the pedals, they will sound like C if I'm playing and the fifth above that. So if I'm playing a C, the G above that, if anybody you're getting any out of that. And then as you go down into the lowest part of the range, things sort of rumble, sort of kind of like if it was a real 32 foot. You get that sound. I'm feeling the earth move kind of thing a little bit versus a true 32 foot pipe. And I talked about before, rank is just a row of pipe. Pipe design, construction, metals. The metal pipes are made usually a combination of tin and lead characteristically. Some things may be made with some copper in them, but there's, and they have a distinct, kind of, sound versus wood pipes that are made out of wood. Oh, I just happen to have here, I forget, I got this in New Hope somewhere. So here's a little, no, I wasn't going to try to build my own organ with, picking up pipes as I go kind of thing. But this sort of, I guess I should show it. Am I showing it good on?
Yeah, for some reason, I can't get the cameras not showing.
Oh, okay. So anyway, this is a pipe. I forget where I got, maybe in New Hope somewhere. And I remember the guy, I got a couple of them. I remember the guy was some church was part of a community yard sale or something, and the church had some things out there. Must have gotten rid of an old organ or something like that. And so, I said, "Oh wow, what a find! I'll buy it." He said, "Aren't you going to bargain?" I didn't haggle. I'm willing to pay full price, whatever that was. I mean, it's like $10, $15, but they were correct. But here, this is stamped on here. This is a D sharp of a doppel flute. So this is interesting because there's an opening on each side. Usually pipes just have an opening, for air to whistle through on one side. This is a doppel flute. Doppel in German means double. Doppelbach, double Bach, German beer. So that's And so they're all based on this. And so you might have there would have to be a whole row or a whole rank of pipes at different sizes for the different notes, but it fits into the reservoir of wood and air goes through there. Scaling in voices are very important. Again, back from that picture, as the pipes get smaller for the higher notes, the diameter of the pipe will change and shrink too. In terms of it's called scaling. If you kept the same size pipe all the way up, it would be screaming at you, in the higher range. So, you need more air to go through at the lower range to operate, but you don't need as much air. And voicing is something that when aside from tuning, voicing is, doing a little fine tuning of how the pipe will sound based on how much space is in the lip, if there's any nicking on the metal, how it's shaped, has it a wide scale or is it a narrow scale pipe, and so on. So there's, again, subject of we could do another seminar. So types of pipes, flues. All right, so basically, spoiling the next slide, there's basically two kinds of pipe. There's flues and reeds. Flues are just like whistles, air going through and making the sound. Reeds operate with, there's a little, reed in the bottom of a pipe that vibrates to make the sound, that the sound then goes up. Open versus stopped, second bullet, type of sound and pitch. Timbre is governed by, physics. We've talked about, shape of the pipe. Is it completely cylindrical or is it wide, narrow? Does it have a bulge? Is it, there's a whole bunch of that kind of thing. But stop pipes, here we go back to physics. Do you remember in your high school physics about pipes, speaking pipes, if you've got an open pipe of 8 feet, you can get the same pitch with a stopped pipe of 4 feet. A stopped pipe is there's something in the top of the pipe that prevents the sound from just, coming out. The sound is the sound wave is going to travel up and then back down and out, kind of thing. So that's an economy thing. If you want to have like a real 32-foot pipe, if it's a stop pipe in the bass thing, you really only need 16 feet of pipe to make a lower sound. So a stop pipe always sounds at an octave lower pitched pure open pipe. Fundamental foundation tones, I touched on that. Principles, it's the principal sound of the organ. They've got a name for it. Diapason is similar to that. Some organs, huge organs, will have diapason 1, diapason 2. Principal, the main, the biggest one of those kind of things. Strings, those are pipes that are very narrow, scale kind of thing. And they're designed to make a very stringier, almost reedy kind of sound. I'll demo that when we go in. And of course, flutes. There's open flutes. They have a certain characteristic. But a stop flute will have more, it'll also, while it's a shorter pipe, and especially if it's made out of wood, it'll have a different kind of sound, maybe a little chiff and different overtones that are, produced, from that. Mutations, they build on the harmonics. There are some stops that are not just 8 foot or 4 foot, which is an octave higher, a 2 foot stop, that's a 2 foot pipe, so you're building a chorus of sound there. Mutations are going to be somewhere in between, like, okay, well, I'll say it's a 2 2/3 or a 1 3/5 foot. So that's the size of the pipe at the low end, but it works off the harmonics, and that's how you build an organ ensemble. Mixtures, which are multiple ranks on the same one. Press one note, and you're getting 2 or 3 or 4 pipes, depending on how the organ has been designed. Those are denoted by Roman numerals. You see that. Celestes, that's an interesting pairing of pipes. You have 2 pipes, usually of a string or open flute kind of tone. And then the other pair with that is tuned slightly sharp. It could be tuned slightly flat. That would be called the unda maris, another German. But a celeste is slightly sharper. So when you play the 2 together, you have this sort of undulating, warm, like string orchestra, not orchestra, but, a string ensemble kind of sound versus just a straight, organ, pitch kind of sound. So you normally use that too much in, like hymn playing or other, things you're doing, because you want to be able to find your pitch, so it's only, special situations. So we'll demo some of that, as well. Sorry, here's a little flute pipe. Yeah, so the diagram is a little small to see, but suffice it to say, you can see here's your basic principal or diapason stop. You know, this one here is a Dulciana. It's a smaller scale one of these. They got a little slot in the top. So there's all sorts of design things. Here's a string stop, very narrow scale. And here's it looks like a Spitz flute. Yeah, Spitz flute, they call it. It's a metal flute stop, but you know, the language is, oops, I touched the screen tag. Will that go away? Mm-hmm. The speaking part is up here, and it's got this bulging around. So, you know, they've found over the years with different shapes and designs how pipes sound. Here's some true 32-foot stops. This is the diapason or principal at the Atlantic City Auditorium, the Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City, Oregon. By scale, here's a guy here standing. He's, you know, maybe 6 feet tall, but this is a 30. That's how big a 32-foot open pipe is. Yeah, 32 feet. And then here's C sharp, D sharp, and so on scale. But they're huge. I remember seeing it. I couldn't find it. There was some wooden pipe they got us somewhere. Maybe it was a 64-foot thing. That's only 8 hertz. I mean, you would really want to feel it. They got a small, you know, pony or something. You know, it's not the basic thing. But you just have to trust me on that one. All right, here's the other family is reeds. Sound produced from a vibrating, you know, reed in the bottom. There are 2 kinds of reeds: chorus reeds, which, you know, blend and help the overall ensemble of the organ tone build. And there's also solo or orchestral or imitative, you know, stops, like we have an oboe, and here's a name here, hautbois. That's a French name for an oboe. So, you know, when the French people, the French organ builders were building things, they called it hautbois, and they made their oboe sound a certain way versus other manufacturers in other countries, you know, kind of thing. Another you might hear, it's not an our organ here, but English horn. We know the special Chalmette. We have one of those on the bottom positive manual, which has a lot of very clear stops and bright stops, like you might find a little bit more from, you know, Bach's time. There's also Krummhorn. French would call it Krummhorn. Germans Krummhorn. Then we have our festival of typical trumpet, English tuba. You heard one of those. One of the neat installations of, I don't know if they called it English tuba. I guess whatever it was, showing maybe done to St. John's Lutheran in town. They've got their big trumpet stop in the ceiling. It's a cathedral type space. The main organ's in the front. They've got an echo division in the back. In the ceiling, overhead in the middle, they've got these fanfare, you know, trumpet stops. It's a really interesting sound in terms of the spatial sound, and that's part of, you know, the organ, you know, world is to do that. Also, an enchimada, I'll have some pictures on there. That's horizontal display. So if we had enchimada trumpets, they would be coming out from the organ and horizontally across, you know, speaking out into the space or into the congregation. And from what I understand, when we looked at getting that the festival trumpet from the Bryn Mawr Church, there was the thought to do that, or at least have it positioned in the back, you know, so that would be pretty neat to have a trumpet in the back. But there was cost and budget and installation issues for putting on. Now we got to build a wind chest and reservoir. It's got to hang there, and what's going to support it. And you know, the money started really well. We found a spot for it, you know, behind the screen. So that's what we did there. But yeah, enchimada means to sound a parlor. Here's some diagrams of reed stops. So these are a whole bunch of different, again, I'm sorry, it's a little hard to see it, but you can just get an idea, at least from what you're seeing, you know, the different shapes of things. You know, here's an oboe. It's very narrow scale with a little bell that opens up at the end. Various other things. Vox humana, that's something that tries to imitate sort of the human voice a little bit on an sound. Here's a Chalmette, like we have that one set of pipes we have on Oregon here. So they look, some of them look really kind of, if you're not used to seeing organ pipes, you're used to seeing the more traditional things. You would say, how did they ever come up with those shapes and make those kind of sounds? We have a couple of percussion stops here. One is the chimes. We've got a beautiful set of tubular chimes on the great manual. We also have a Zimbelstern that was added, German for cymbal star, also cymbal stern. And in many organs, especially ones that are, you know, I was trying to be of a certain period, when it's operating, you'll see this star go by North Moravian Church up above them. You know, when that's engaged, there's a star that goes around and showing that it's engaged or is actually making, the noise. And a tremolo, we have a couple of one thing like the tremolo, sort of a light vibrato. In the theater world, gospel, they would call vibrato, very heavy. But this is tremolo. This has a slight undulating kind of thing to make it sort of, a little bit warmer tone for solo things only. So here's some behind the scenes stuff. So I came out one night to take some pictures in the chambers, so I could share with you what some of the pipes look like. But I got this shot. It didn't produce what I was hoping to see, and that is, you could see the pipes if you look really carefully and closely behind the screen. Based on the screen itself and the lighting, and I tried different ways of taking the photograph. Here's our exterior pipes over here. If you can barely see that on either side, these big pedal principal stops. But basically, you come in over. There's a secret hatch. You come up, and up here, there's this part of the great division over here, the unenclosed. So there's no encumbrance of swell shades and things like that, which could make the organ loud and soft. I'll get more to that. And this is where those chimes are located in this section here. Then here's the swell division over here. So the top manual has this pipes that work over here, and the positive choir stops over here. Here we're looking at the pipes in the swell, looking in the swell. So you can see, here's some mitering of the pipes. You see this one here? This is, I think, the 16-foot fagato, sort of a bassoon kind of sound, but it had to, not enough room to squeeze it all in the cavity up there in the chamber, so they had to miter it around. Here's some more of the pipes, and these look like trumpet kinds of stops. Then in this second frame, here's these stopped pipes here. These are part of the roar flute stop, where it's got sort of a cap on it, but there's a little place for some of the partials sounds to escape as well. And some of the mixture stops down here where multiple ranks sound at once. And then here taking another shot further toward the screen, looking out into the sanctuary, I wanted to make sure you got a chance to see. These are the swell shades, they're called. This is what you're able to with the two divisions that we have, open and close, like Venetian blinds, vertical in this case. Some organs are horizontal, but this is what lets the sound out. Or if you want to make it softer, you can close the shot. The pipes only sound one sound, only one volume. So if you want to, swell, the volume, you open up the shades, operated by one of those foot pedals in the middle of the base of the console above the pedal board. Here's looking great. So this is when you come in first from the chamber from that side. So here's the tubular chimes of the grate, in front of a couple of those mixture, stops there. Yeah, beautiful set of chimes. Design consideration and features here. I'm going to have to be going pretty fast now so we can still get some time in the sanctuary. Enclosed, unenclosed, I talked about that. Basically, wind pressure is another factor. Some stops, like big trumpets, might require more wind pressure than a soft little flute. You don't want to overpower. So that's all part of the science and design of organ building. Maintenance, tuning, it's not cheap. Several times a year we have to have the professional tuner come out. He goes up there on these little catwalks. You maybe saw some of those in those other pictures. See those little walkways, over there, for instance. Make sure you've got good balance. That's required of the job, because you don't want to fall down. Temperature and humidity makes a difference. I was warming up with a couple of things this morning, and based on the temperature, it's cold overnight, so the organ's a little bit out of tune. That's later in the day, it may warm up, kind of thing. Ciphers, that's where a pipe sounds unintentionally. Typically occurs when if you're playing something that you let go, and there's one note that's sort of stuck somewhere. So that happens with real pipe. That happens, and so the good organist will know where your pipes are and find what stop that is. And I've been to concerts where they got to get the tuner, the maintenance guy. He goes up, not the organist, and they got to go find it. And just sometimes the solution is just take the pipe out. But something got stuck in the valve that opens up the air for that pipe to sound. Here's an example of how wind gets to, various pipes coming in from the air pump in the chamber into the cavity just below the pipe foot. And then the electronic signal from the organ, will send this thing down, relay kind of action down, and air will then go into the pipe. Types of actions, yeah, electropneumatic, that's widely used, that's our organ. So there's electricity involved. Pneumatic, it's air. So we've got air supply coming in, but it's electrically operated, an electric blower that operates all that. And some of the earlier consoles even had air working. The pistons are those buttons you press, and you've got things preset to the way you want, which stops you want to come on. Usually those are electronic now, but it's electricity opening the stop. Remember that the previous chart, it's electricity is opening the valve for that stop to operate on air. A tracker organ is something where you've got a direct connection to the pipe. You're not using electric to drive it. You're actually, the idea is there that the organists like having I'm really feeling, the touch. In the early trackers day, if you are coupling, I want to play not only what's on this manual, but I want to play the stops that are on this manual here. So I hit this coupler, and so I can play it once here. Now those keys are going down. It's like a player piano kind of thing. You see, they're going down, but it's getting, as you have more keyboards coupled and more stops on, it's getting, there's a little bit of weight going on. You got to have, good fingers to do that. Electronic or digital sound production, of course, these days there's a lot of digital, electronic organs and hybrids as well, with various kinds of things. Even trackers, it's not necessarily an old German tracker where you pull out the stop. You really had to have an assistant. So while you're playing, somebody's got to pull out that stop so the air can go into that reservoir for those pipes. But hybrids today generally are, I've got a real pipe organ, I want to expand it, I don't have the space or maybe the money to add more pipes. So we'll go with some digital stuff, whether it's from, Walker Technical is one of the ones, well used here, Allen Organ, Rogers, they all do that kind of thing. AGOs, all this stuff is designed based on these days AGO specifications, so that there's relative commonality from the player to the instrument. On our manuals, our organ here, we have manuals keep it 61 notes. Swell and choir positive are closed behind shades, so you can adjust the volume. Pedals typically is a 32 note unenclosed. It's concave and radiating. I'll try to make sure I point that out when I get there. But so that when you're sitting at the bench, if you're trying to play the upper note up here, the high G, you don't have to go out over here because it's concave. It's actually a little bit higher over there, so you don't have to stretch quite as far. So it's designed to fit the swing of your feet better. We have classic draw knobs as our stops, but some organs have stop tabs, others tilting tablets, and our couplers I mentioned where we can connect the stops of one manual to another. Pistons and toe sets. So there are some pistons that can work and have those things preset that you want just for each individual manual, some for the whole organ. General cancel, exclamation point, that's every organist's favorite stop, our favorite pistons. Jump, you hit that button down here, it all goes back. So if you're playing something with, let's say, a lot of stops on and you want to do something soft and you're going to manually adjust, you hit that thing, it's gone, and then you can pull out. Memory levels here, part of our organ now has the extra, so with multiple organists, it's nice if you can have different levels of memory, so each organist can then set up their pistons without interfering with the regular organist. With the swell pedals, those are the two pedals that operate the volume, the swell shades that let the sound in and out. A crescendo pedal actually adds stops automatically up to close to full organ, which would be up by the 2D, but I'll try to demo that if we have time. You need ancillary equipment. Oh yeah, so you got to have a bench. People play keyboards, these days. But with an organ, you got to have a bench. If you're going to play the pedals, you got to be able to sit down, and shoes required. So you have to have, the gear. These are organ shoes, and what enables you to play better pedals is that they're very narrow. They're not these wide things, clodhoppers that you probably only want to play one note at a time, or maybe two with both feet, but you don't want to play, more than one. And it's a very thin sole, so you can feel the pedal, but not have just like wearing a pair of socks where your feet would get tired of, closing the pedal. Most significant thing is the elevated heel. It's like, see how it's designed with a little bit of elevation there. So that enables you to pivot on the pedals, because you play the pedals not just with the top of your feet, but you're playing heel and toe. So you can pivot with the pedal too. So yeah, walking on these things, I don't know how women do with high heels, because this is enough elevation. I'm sort of going forward. I feel a little bit awkward walking too far, on these kind of thing. And I don't want to walk, if I'm playing, I don't want to wear those, down the hallway onto the floor, especially in the wintertime when there might be snow and melt. If you get these wet, you lose your slide. It's important that you be able to slide on the pedals as you play as well. ATO specification. This is showing the different keyboards. It's all designed. How many keyboards do you have? What's the standard specification? Or okay, what's the elevation, the pitch? So as you go up higher on a keyboard, the keyboard's angled toward you. Again, it's ergonomics kind of thing as well. Here's the pedal board. So you can see the top part of the slide. You can see a cross section, how it's curved. And the bottom section, you can see the radiating coming out from the back of the pedal board. It radiates again to compensate for where your feet are going to be. Here's the stop jams here. On the left slide is the left section of pipes, or the left section of the stops, or the pedal stops. The middle section where it says swell, yeah, can't read it. But here's the stops that operate the swell. So this is the pedal that operates the ones on the pedal. The swell, this is the top manual. Stops here. On the second slide, the grate, that's the main manual, that's the center manual here. And the positive, these are the stops that are operating on the bottom, the third keyboard down, kind of thing. And again, with these couplers, which are across the top of that console, you can connect one manual to another or to the pedals, depending on how you're trying to orchestrate your sound. This is the little, if you're recording something, you can record it and put it back in here and press the play button and it can play on autopilot kind of thing. These are the pistons. So these are the general pistons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you're setting something up, there's a little setter button just off the kit. You put on the stops you want, you press the set button, and then that remembers that one, and until somebody changes it, kind of thing. So they work the whole organ. These are divisional pistons, so they work just for the division that you're playing with. Some of those things are repeated. Those pistons are repeated on the pedal, above the pedal. So here's general one. This is general one. So if your hands are too busy playing up here, and you got to change stops in the middle of a concert piece or something, you can use your feet. If your feet are too busy, you can use your hands. So it gives you some access here. This is the pedal that works. This swell pedal that works the positive set of stops. This is the swell pedal that works the swell stops. And this is that crescendo pedal I talked about. Here's this. Here's the sforzando. That's the full organ button. I guess the cymbal stern is either out here or up here. I forget. See that? How many people are from the old church? Remember that? So this is a photo of a picture that's old and faded kind of thing. So you can't see too much, but this is the organ. I don't know when the picture was, but certainly after 1974 when the organ is still played. So you can see the pipes, the exposed pipes are still there and they continue to expose. It's in a little bit different array. On our sanctuary now, these pipes, these mixtures across the top, they're down with this level here and spread out because our chance was pretty wide versus this was a more narrow chance, but it's still the same things back in here, the swell and the positive, the great stops kind of thing. Is Bob there? Bob, is that you in front of the Christmas tree? Bob Young?
You're on mute. He's on mute.
Oh. I'm thinking it's a little hard to see. It's a little fuzzy picture. But that's what I'm guessing.
I imagine it is.
Yeah. I'm glad I got you in the presentation. Thank you.
I just
All right,
came.
and you're paying some honor to Tim, our new music director and organist. This is some pipes from his church. old church at Wayne Presbyterian. I was there on an organ crawl, a custom organ crawl kind of thing. So I got to take a picture of the first frame of the pipes there. And then this is from their website. So these are getting a little, fuzzy and old. You can't see, but it's just interesting to see the different kinds of pipe displays. And then the chancel shop, the one on the far right, you can't see the insurmount trumpets very much. They're in the just below the stained glass windows. These are the horizontal pipes, coming out of the sanctuary. Here's some more other pictures just picked off the website for what trumpet and shema would look like. I like the one on the second frame with the from above. Somehow they got a camera to take a picture above those pipes looking down into the nave of the church. Here's some other examples of console or case designs. This is showing something. I wanted to show this one because it has the positive stop. This is sort of a Baroque era type organ. This positive is here, which is typical installation of the time. This is actually behind the bench. So between here and here, there's a space. Oh, sorry, I keep touching the screen. So there's a place for the organ console, probably fixed in with the pipe case in the bench. And so he's playing, but the rank of pipes here is behind him. So they called it a rook positive. So if you have that kind of set up there. So here's something, just another example this is from First Presbyterian in New York City. They got a new organ a number of years back, just to show some of the nice display. Here's some real pipes over here to get the sort of the art and beauty side of just sound production kind of thing. But if you look at these one on the side here over by the balcony seating, you see, I'm guessing those are dummy pipes because they would be different stages for the different sounds. Here's a huge monster. This is the Cadet Chapel organ at the U.S. Naval Academy kind of thing. I mean, this represents almost 16,000 pipes. What do we have? 2,600. So you're very big. 5 manuals. That's a common. This is a hybrid too. I mean, they've got it's a branded Muller organ instrument there, but they've augmented it over years. And then finally, Walker Technical Company came in and built another huge organ just out of digital stocks, enhancing that. Here's our local, favorite here, the Wanamaker store, neat shop, looking at the console and the facade, the pipe facade. Those pipes really don't work, but they look. Notice on the console, back on the keyboards, when I was talking about how the higher the more keyboards you have going up, because you couldn't reach. They just built it straight. You wouldn't be able to reach, be falling off or on the keys. So that's designed to go up there. So that's 6 manuals. Meet me at the Eagle, kind of thing. There's the view from the back. Here's a close up of the console, a little fuzzy, but you got. And for a while, before the Friends of Wanamaker came along, it was really falling into disrepair. For a while, I worked in Philadelphia, so I was able, when Keith Chapman was there, I don't know if you know that name, but he was the organist there for a long time. I would get to see him, watch him play during lunch. They had their noontime, half-hour concerts kind of thing. And the pistons weren't working, so if he needed, to build up the full organ, you'd see him just sort of reach over to the side and put on all those stops with his hand, and put on all those stops, or take them all off. That's it. All right, so but a little bit. Oh, sorry. Yes.
I have a suggestion. I mean, this has been such a great presentation. I think we need to have you back for an organ demonstration next week. No,
Well, yeah, I don't know. They were getting ready to head to Florida, so I don't know if I could do that. But if we wanted to do that
in April or May, would that work for you?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to cut that short.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a ton of questions.
Yeah.
I mean,
why don't we just let's go with that. Let's just in the 2 minutes that are left. I'm sure we can go 2 minutes over. But yeah, I think in terms of respecting that, no, I appreciate that. I'd be glad to glad to do that.
Right.
Because that would be pretty abbreviated. This will give me more chance to say, okay, we can come back referring to these slides. Okay, here's this kind of a stop. Notice the difference in the timbre from that one and this one.
Yeah.
Here's something that looks like a flute here, but they're different. And same thing with the different manufacturers, what they call a trumpet, it's going to sound different than some other manufacturers' trumpet. Again, that's all going to be based on how they design and scale their ideas, the owners and their workers, and how the scale the voice, or, how they want it to sound, kind of thing. So we can, demonstrate some of that. Okay.
So I have how about these living room organs?
Yeah.
My, wife's parents had an organ in their living room. They don't have room for all these 16-foot,
Yeah.
but they have low notes.
Yeah, it's all digital technology. Well, and of course, they had those kind of organs before digital. It was, sound generators, that were, electronically creating some type of sound that they could, play with the sound tone generators. So I've got an organ, and I've got a digital Allen at home, a 2-manual. So I get a chance to practice, there before, coming here, kind of thing. So I'm very fortunate for us to have that. But yeah, that's all digital stuff. This was like a 2nd generation digital. So this is self-contained. I don't have extra speakers, something, but yeah, and those digital things, you have to admit, as time goes forward, technology keeps improving. They keep designing those sound waves, really approximate more and more the actual sound waves generated by real pipe. And many of the digital ones, they're actually recording. They're actually recording pipe pitches and then incorporating into the work.
All right. I know people who've learned to play the guitar on their own. Obviously, this takes lessons and you're probably still learning, but how long did it take you to become accomplished at this?
I think that was in my bio. So like 45 years of diversified church music experience. No, that's a good question. Most of my friends, it was in 9th grade. So we moved to Allentown, and I had that church experience at First Pres when I was in 7th grade. But by 9th grade, I had been taking piano lessons from the neighbor that lived behind us in Allentown, who was one of the assistant organists at First Pres. And she knew my interest in the organ, so she invited me one summer, the summer after 9th grade, would you like to learn to play the organ? I thought we were going to play the little old Allen 2-manual, in the chapel choir room, but no, it was on the big organ, which I didn't realize at the time. So that was 65. And the organ there was installed in 59 when they built the church. I was only 6 years old, and I got to play that thing. I mean, so yeah, I just had this, cascading, interest and, reward of, delving inside. So I had a summer of lesson, but then, in high school, I got busy with, swing, early morning paper routes, all that kind of thing. And so a lot of the musical study sort of went, but we had a piano at home. It was my dad's piano he grew up on. So I continued to play at it. And I had a good sense of, thanks to God, of harmony and chords, and chord progression and things. So I could play, hints a little bit, just by sound, kind of thing. But yeah, it wasn't until my Lafayette years, I went back to college. When I went to Lafayette in Colton Chapel there, they had an Austin organ like ours at First Presbyterian, smaller scale, still 3 manuals, but much smaller instruments, no 32-foot. And that sort of rekindled my interest at that time. So I took organ lessons from the head of the music department here, who was the chapel organist for the last 1.5 years of my time at Lafayette. And then at church, playing on occasional Sundays in summer, kind of thing. I always made it my pledge to wherever possible, try to learn something and play something new. So I don't, next year I'd also pull out, well, what did I do last year? Okay, I'll touch that. Can I continue to expand my capability by, forcing myself to not just, I get into a hard part of the music, I'll just turn the page and go on. But, so it's a lot of self-discipline in my case and blessing.
Conrad, that was great.
I see the monitor coming up to.
And we look forward to next spring of having you give us hands-on demos in the sanctuary.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, maybe we can get the whole soundboard working up there.
We'll have to work with Lynn and see if we can put a whole hour together.
But thanks for inviting me to be a part of the morning this morning. I really enjoyed being here with you.
Thank you. And remember, next week, even though it's not on your calendars that you may look at and say, well, what are we doing next Tuesday? And you see nothing, we do have something. We will have discussion group. So please come and enjoy an hour of good fellowship. Thank you.
What are we doing?
Thank you.
What are we doing next Tuesday?
Thank you.
But Yeoman's job, put him in my shoes.
Discussion. You play jazz on your organ?
I'm not much of, I'm not much of a jazz. I can register like this organ. I can play, some all kinds of stuff. I've got a set of pistons on one of the memory levels for, putting some of those mutation stops together to make a different kind of sound than a regular straight church.
Jimmy Smith on the organ? Oh, he's the greatest jazz organist of all time.
I'll have to Google him and see, but
I have records by him.
I'm sorry.